is going ahead. Appointments have started happening. Ron Klain has been named as White House Chief of Staff, but Biden and Harris are committed to a White House staff that reflects more diversity, that looks like America. Ed, what's happening?
Well, you haven't heard my name mentioned. A good friend of mine, Cedric Richmond from New Orleans, who was elected to Congress while I was there, is a very good friend. I'll probably be in touch with Cedric, and he's going to go to work in the White House, as he should. He was a surrogate for Biden throughout the South and one of his biggest supporters all around. I would not be surprised if I don't know personally some of the people who will be in the White House and at least sub-cabinet officers. And that's, at my age, one would find that strange. But a lot of the young people that I worked with in the United States, and some of them are my students, are in the orbit with Kamala Harris. And so, and some of the names I've heard are people that I do know. Obviously, I'm going to send congratulations and say, I'm not open for work. But I might say, given the need to scrub up places like Australia and the coronavirus, if they need me for any honorary work, I'll be available. I think this is an administration that doesn't need to be diverted into little stuff. It has a lot of things on its plate, particularly this virus. And it needs some people who will hold up the store and hold the doors open until the troops arrive. So I'll put my hand up for that.
We will talk more about the virus in just a moment, but one other plan that's been making waves this week is the possibility of Biden using an executive order once in office to eliminate, either in part or totally, the nation's student debt. It sounds like a bit of a Bernie idea. What do you make of this one, Ed?
No, Joe's talked about this, and this is the way it would work, at least the plan he said on television, is everyone will get at least $10,000 off current student debt, and there'd be some forgiveness of past student debt. I think, and I've said this before, and I said Trump would do it, eliminate all the student debt. It's not going to be paid. These people will pay more in taxes than they'll ever collect from this debt. Why not do it? And this would almost guarantee his next election.
How might this one fit into the idea of the economic recovery, though?
Well, it fits in very well because people will have cash. When you're paying debt, you don't have cash to buy other things. And when you're paying in the United States cash for anything, as you know, when you go to a store, they say it's $1, and then they say, oh, it's $1.10 with the tax. So a lot of this will come back in taxes. It'll also come back in housing. And when people buy housing, they buy furniture and so forth. It will stimulate the economy. This is a good move to make money, not to save money.
You're absolutely right. American sales tax is somewhat infuriating at times. Look, as we mentioned last week, COVID is going to be one of those big challenges to face Biden when he takes office. Democrats are already shaping the response, but the current administration, Republicans seem to have completely given up basically on any kind of response. US deaths are now at 250,000. And even with it costing lives, Republicans almost, they seem to be deliberately steering it so Biden will be in the worst possible position when he officially takes over. What do you make of it, Ed?
Well, just what you said. I forget what the biblical parable is, but the person who put salt in the soil so nothing would grow. And that's the Republicans' position. One piece of salt they were going to put in the soil was putting this crazy woman on the board of governors of the Federal Reserve who believed in the gold standard. I believe in the gold standard too, but I'm less crazy. But And they're filling up all kinds of offices and so on with people who are totally incompetent. And they want every bit of debt. They want to put around Biden's neck the fact that there is no recovery money. And they'll block every recovery act that they can. And that's why the Senate election is so important, because if they can get even Steve in the Senate, that's 50-50, and Kamala becomes basically the person who breaks ties, it means they can get things on the floor of the Senate. If they don't have the Senate, Mitch McConnell will block bills from coming to the floor. Fortunately, I think Susan Collins has been chastised enough, so she'll come over. Murkowski will come over from Alaska, and on some things, Romney will come over. So they would have 53 votes if this happens and get anything through that they want. And this is exactly what they need. I hope you bring up Graham sometime in this conversation.
Yes, we will get to good old Lindsey Graham. Just sticking with COVID for the moment, though, there is this, well, I guess a bit of hope on the horizon with this announcement from two different companies that they've developed a possible vaccine with a success rate of 90% or greater. Look, is this a game changer, or do we have to wait and see?
I think these companies aren't playing. So these vaccines will be available, but how many people will die before they get a vaccine? That's the issue. And it's a good thing there are two companies, because now people can say, well, I didn't want to take Moderna anyway, I'll take Pfizer. All the people who said they wouldn't take one can now choose from two. So I think that's a good thing. And I think when Kamala rolls up her sleeve and Joe rolls up his sleeve and members of the cabinet do the same thing and trusted members of Congress do the same thing, this part of the deal will be over. But the economic recovery is so far back, it's like the Depression. And there'll have to be government work created, building bridges, building stadia, and rebuilding a national health system. So I think there's a lot of work to do. And if Joe goes back and reads what Roosevelt did, I take everything, dust it off, polish it up, and put it in play.
And who knows, there might even be a little bit of a focus on sustainable technologies while they're at that rebuilding process.
There will be.
Just on the economic recovery, though, Biden, as we say, is powerless to do anything of substance before he gets in, before he takes office. But he has been calling on Congress to come together and pass a COVID relief package, before the holidays, essentially, with a lot of Americans obviously suffering. What's happening on that front? Are we likely to see it?
Not as long as Mitch McConnell's there. He doesn't want Biden to take credit for it. This is shameful. I've never seen the United States members of Congress withholding things from the people of the United States, from red states primarily, just to satisfy the ego of one man. And that's what this is all about.
Yes, of course, the elephant in the room is Donald Trump. Donald Trump and Republicans are still refusing to concede the election and doing basically all these kinds of things as a form of lashing out. Trump is tweeting nonsense about how he won, and he's tweeting out various conspiracy theories there are those completely frivolous lawsuits that are being thrown out of courts across some of the states that are in contention. And the vast majority of Republicans are saying absolutely nothing about Trump.
Members of the Senate, Republican people in the street are saying a lot. Let's move on. They had their little minute in Washington with a crowd of 50,000. I think we've had that many for Mother's Day in Washington. And a few demonstrations, particularly in Michigan. The Michigan governor, she's drawing a lot of crowds. But in most of the states, people are acting very sanely and just want to get on, and winter is coming. They have to do something soon. Americans are dying because of Mitch McConnell, and people ought to know that.
Republicans, as you touched on before, Ed, they've been trying to force through basically everything they can before Trump goes. Trump's nomination to the Federal Reserve, Judy Shelton, that one has fallen apart in the Senate.
Thank God. She was up once before, and even Trump thought, "Ooh, this is a coup." No, she. And you notice two people crossed the aisle to make this happen.
Mm-hmm.
So I think those two people, Romney and Collins, will cross the aisle again, and Murkowski will cross the aisle again. Things for the American people. And I think Sass will cross the aisle. There'll be more Republicans coming to the middle ground because in 2 years, they'll be out of work if they don't come to the middle. And the left has to come to the center as well.
Trump has been living up to his old catchphrase, though, with a firing spree before he leaves office with new appointments in defense and the like. The latest, though, Christopher Krebs, the director of the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. He debunked some of the election security conspiracies that Trump's been spouting. And, that this is basically the most secure election ever, thanks to Donald Trump, yet Democrats still interfered in it. Look, Ed, is there a reason for concern given this new list of appointees?
No. Mr. Krebs is representing a whole bunch of people who are his equals in state governments and parts of the federal government and in the FBI and elsewhere, who were on the alert to stop foreign interference and even any local interference in this election, and they were successful. So the words that came out did not come from his mouth. They came from a group, a collection of agencies which he chaired, that noted that this was the freest and fairest election ever. And Donald Trump is trying to make it out as something else. And this goes on every day. If there's a misplaced ballot or something like this, they try to make it into a big deal. But I notice they don't try to make it any big deal in a red state or in a state that Trump won. Because if people have been doing all these bad things in Pennsylvania, surely they were doing some bad things in South Carolina.
Mm. While we're on this, though, Trump has been making some very sudden military decisions. We're seeing new appointee Christopher Miller announcing plans to reduce U.S. troop levels in Iraq and Afghanistan. And yet, according to reports this week, Trump asked senior advisors his options to take action against Iran's main nuclear site in the coming weeks. And look, in its own way, it's kind of perfectly consistent for Trump. He doesn't know whether he wants to end wars or start them. What do you make of it, Ed?
Well, we've talked about this over and over again, that he would start a war with Iran to save his presidency. This is now to end his presidency with a big bang. Cooler heads have prevailed for the moment. He still has several weeks left. I don't know what's going to happen. The Iranians need to move very quickly and show that they have every intention of rejoining that nuclear agreement by standing down and being very public about it. This would make Trump's war mongering seem as silly as it is.
And in Georgia, the Senate race is, of course,
Are you talking about the country, or are you talking about the state? Both of them have critical electoral issues.
You're absolutely correct. Looking within the United States, though, obviously this one will determine control of the Senate and the ability to enact a real Biden agenda. What's going on?
Well, as it happens, there was a senator who resigned in Georgia, which meant there had to be what we call a by-election for him, and that's scheduled for the same time as the regular Senate election. Makes sense. You save money.
Mm.
But also, as it happens, both of these races during the primary period, the electoral period we just witnessed, didn't have enough votes to clear the requirement in Georgia. That is 50 plus 1%. So if you get 50% plus one other voter, you win. If you get less than that, there's a runoff. So both of these contests are in the runoff phase. And in both cases, Democrats are in the runoff against Republicans who have very tarnished records. So the Republicans are so desperate that they sent a letter asking that the Secretary of State be dismissed because he was not doing anything to suppress the Black vote. Can you imagine? Not suppressing the Black vote? That's un-Southern. And moreover, he's a Republican. My goodness, what will we have next? Well, we have Stacey Abrams.
Somebody did not get the memo.
Abrams is getting out the Black vote. And the combination of the Black vote, the suburban vote, and the college vote could oust both Republicans. It's a possibility. Most people think could be close, but they think the Republicans will win. I don't know what to think. I was so surprised in Georgia. I'm not doubting Stacey in her capacity. One of the things I didn't know was because this race is in January, mid-January, there will be more eligible voters because a lot of young people turn 18. And they've already been basically proselytized by the Abrams campaign. So they know who these young people are. They all have their voter registration cards in hand, and they are registering in big numbers, hundreds of thousands. So the potential here, and I think these races could be so close that those kids can make the difference. If there are 300,000 or 400,000 of them who vote for the Democrats, and they have two votes, two seats are up, those 300,000 or 400,000 could turn it because Joe Biden is only winning in Georgia by 14,000 votes. So this could be a nail biter again. I'll have to go to my heart doctor before this election. But right now I'm flying so high on the gas of the latest wind, maybe I could get through this one. There's another possibility. Let's say if one of the Democrats wins and one of the Republicans wins, and the Republicans only have a 2-vote majority, and Murkowski and Collins say, look, for the purpose of leadership, we're going to vote with the Democrats. There's no rule that says the speaker or the president of the Senate is elected by people from their party. So the two of them, maybe with Romney, elect Chuck Schumer to run the House. They keep their 51 people, but they don't have the leadership. And so they will be able to put things on the floor for up or down vote that currently Mitch McConnell is blocking even from that. So that's a possibility.
Certainly more to speak on that one, which we'll do in some future chats, no doubt. But before I let you go, Ed, obviously want to touch on Lindsey Graham, as you mentioned before. He's got himself in trouble in Georgia as well, accused of trying to pressure Georgia's Secretary of State to exclude perfectly legal ballots in the state's presidential recount. Now, some have questioned why Graham from South Carolina has even gotten himself involved. I mean, for all his early criticism, certainly he has become one of Trump's most loyal toadies, but still, he himself is not up for election again until 2026. Why risk his skin for Trump in all this?
Why not think about running for president if you're Lindsey Graham and saying you supported Trump right to the very end and you're delighted he's ended, but you get those Trump voters. And he's banking on that he supported Trump, and now those loyal voters will support him when he runs for president. That's what it's all about. The way he did it, though, is going to make this very hard, because anyone who runs against him will say, aha, this is why you did that. You had no real intention of supporting Trump. You were actually supporting yourself.
Absolutely devious stuff. Ed, thanks very much, mate. We'll catch you again next week.
Oh, we'll have a lot to talk about for a change.